Show us light from now. Show us sight for where we can go. And forget which no guide and light. Do you know where is the goal? Don't just follow. We can try, 'cause we're living now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 359. Why 359? Because last week I accidentally said 368. It was 358. And the reason why I said that is because the week before that, I accidentally labeled the episode 367. But only in some places, not all of them. So anyways, that has been fixed. We are back on track. I would I haven't gone back and checked, but like going back and seeing if I ever mislabeled an episode in a way that messed up the numbering. I would be curious like how far back that happened and how much it has hurt us. how far are off are we? How many times have we messed up the episode numbers? Anyways, we're here to talk about Booth Babes. Booth Babes, this show is all about sexy women. Now we're here to talk about video games. Booth Babes will be a topic because something came up that was kind of interesting that I just had some thoughts on. We're also going to talk about the Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. It's here. Animal Crossing Pocket Edition. What was I saying? Animal Pocket Crossing Camp, I think is what I was saying. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Pocket Edition? Is that accurate? I don't know. I didn't write the names down here properly, maybe. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete. I think that's the name. We are a well-researched podcast here. And then also we're going to talk about Final Fantasy XI again. I just want to kind of give you guys a more like straightforward update on Final Fantasy XI. Also where I'm kind of at with Final Fantasy XI in the video. And then finally we'll wrap up with some Final Fantasy XIV thoughts I had as well. So very Final Fantasy MMO heavy week this week. But we'll start with news stories. So if you're like, man, Ben, I don't give a crap about your original Final Fantasy character saving the world. Be like, sure, yeah, I get it. I feel you, man. Let's start with Booth Babes, though. Hey, you know, something that I don't think about very often are Booth Babes. I was never exposed really to Booth Babes. If you don't know, Booth Babes are basically, when you have like a event or something like that, typically like an E3 kind of stuff in like the 2000s, they'd have like sexy ladies in cosplays and things like that. And I think generally the sentiment is, I don't know what exactly happened, but generally the sentiment seems to be that like for whatever reason they didn't want that to be part of the image of the industry anymore. And I don't know if it's like an ESA regulation that happened or something, but Booth Babes, from what I understand, kind of disappeared from those kind of events. I've never really been to those events in a meaningful manner, so I don't know, maybe they're still around. And sometimes I'm reminded of this because I listened to Jeff Gersman's podcast, and I forget why it came up, but he mentioned the fact is like, yeah, Booth Babes being gone, and then he was kind of talking about how that was a good thing overall, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's generally the narrative I've heard over the years, like, hey, it's ultimately a good thing that we have generally accepted to remove Booth Babes from these events and stuff like that. However, I was on Inside Games, and Inside Games, a lot of Japanese websites will have like cosplay gallery sections, basically. A lot of this is related to Comiket and stuff like that. But this year, I mean, I'm sure this is probably every year, but this is like just on my mind because I was listening to Jeff talk about it. They have a Tokyo Game Show 2024 gallery. And basically they're just like, hey, here are all the Booth Babes from the various like booths, including Konami, Big One. I don't know what Big One is, or Big One? Maybe it's Big One. My brain is there was a place called Big Wong in Chinatown, so I think that was on my mind. Konami really is the probably most noticeable, recognizable name on here. But yeah, it basically is just a gallery of, a bunch of ladies. The Metal Gear Solid one. I wonder if that outfit is similar to the old Metal Gear Solid 3 one, because it's a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, right? So Metal Gear Solid Delta, a booth for that. But the guy in this article who wrote this article, and as far as I can tell, he is a photographer. and he will typically do cosplay photography specifically. He specifically said that he believes booth babes are even more important today. Again, machine translation. I'm just kind of interpreting what he said based off that. And the reason why he seemed to give that reasoning is because of smartphones, and how smartphones basically allow everybody to take pictures or whatever, right? And so what happens when you go to these events now is that people are asking to take pictures of these booth babes and things like that more often, and so they stay busier is like I think the general sentiment. His name is Nogi Akira is what it is. But yeah, it just was kind of interesting to see it presented as like not just a like, oh, this is a good thing, but also it is more important than ever before in terms of being important for like sharing games on social media and things like that. I will say this seems like a very casually written kind of thing. I'm not saying that this is something that like is like a formal essay. It's just I'm here to post a photo gallery. Here's my general thoughts. And the machine translation says, a while ago, the role of the hostess was to hand out giveaways and attract visitors to the booth. But the importance of the hostess has been increasing year by year is basically what he said. So yeah, it was just kind of interesting. I think with sexualized content, it's really hard for me to navigate that stuff for a lot of different reasons. So one of the things I do try to do in general is just like keep a really broad set of people I have these kind of conversations with. I think it's really important to do that. And one of the challenges I have is you have kind of like the more, I guess you could say, I don't know if old school style is the right word, but I think you have a lot of people who would typically be the kind of people who be like, booth babes are, sexist kind of thing because, it's basically putting some kind of sexualized person in front of this thing to attract people or something like that. I think that would be the general thought on that. And the idea behind it is that, it is kind of there specifically to like attract the male gaze kind of thing, I think is probably what the negative aspect of that is. But then you also have like sex positivity stuff on the other side of that, where people are like, hey, if you want to like make yourself all sexy and stuff and go, utilize that, do what you want to do, right? I think I've mentioned before on this show, there's like some platform called like OnlyFans, I think, where people basically do, I would say sexualized pictures as far as I understand. I don't know 100% if it's like all sexual content or not, but it's like the idea that you can just basically post sexy pictures of yourself on OnlyFans. And I think they actually go in like the like 18 plus kind of category with that stuff too, of like being willing to go and basically sell pictures of you kind of thing, right? And like the joke always seems to be like, hey, you can go like sell pictures of your feet and stuff like that. And so like nobody needs to know who you are, they just need to know who your feet are and they'll pay you money for it kind of thing, right? And so like I don't know, it's like this weird kind of like separation where like it feels like on one side there is this very like, hey, I want to kind of celebrate my body and do that in a way that is like sexually appealing to other people and do it in a way that benefits me as well. And then I feel like you have like kind of the other side of things where people were like, oh, this is like very exploitative. And, I think that's not too uncommon in general to have those kind of two different perspectives on something. But, I do think from an industry perspective, when you look at these events, I think it's probably true. I don't want to say it's probably true. I do think booth babes is probably a more common thing in Japanese conventions, at least these like big ones with like a company like Konami. That being said, the people on this list, Konami, MSI, Ola, Giga Crystal, Narushi, Western Digital, Kiria, On, Xplayer, like these companies, these brands at least, other than Konami, I don't personally know. So I don't know. Maybe it is like more of a low level company kind of thing where a booth babe is more likely to be utilized, right? I don't know if like Nintendo even does events anymore. I don't feel like I ever see Nintendo events ever anymore. But like if Nintendo has a booth, are they going to have a booth babe? I don't think they really bother with that kind of stuff anymore, as far as I can tell. I don't know if that's true for Japan or not. I do remember that one year when they had like a bunch of 3DSs tied to women, and that was like kind of odd to see at the time. But yeah, so I don't know. It is this kind of weird thing of, I have a hard time navigating, because like when I talk about sexual content, I want to talk about it in like a storytelling kind of way usually, or like a gameplay mechanic kind of thing, right? Like Senran Kagura Reflections, right? If you're like, Ben, why are you interested in Senran Kagura Reflections? And I'll sit there and tell you about how I want to utilize the Joy-Cons to massage somebody. Like, I'm talking about like the act of using Joy-Cons to replicate the feeling of massage, this very hand intensive thing that has particular motions and all that stuff, right? And, that's why I can do that thing where I went and like compared it to setting the C4 bombs in Call of Duty 3 on the Wii. It's like, it's that same thing of like, here's this very specific delicate task that you need to use your hands for, and we're going to have you utilize this controller that is designed to kind of read what your hands are doing and try to connect that movement you're doing in real life with something in the world, right? That is like what I'm thinking about with Senran Kagura Reflections. I'm not just like, oh God, those girls, those big titty girls kind of thing, right? I'm not doing that. It's just not what I'm here to do. I find sexual preference stuff for me to be a very private thing, and it's not something I really want to talk about ever. And so it's like, for me, that like that conversation's so difficult to navigate when you start bringing in like people's thoughts that are like just kind of the raw emotion of like, I want to see sexy girl, right? Like that's harder for me to figure out and navigate and like understand how to talk about that in a way that's like respectful, right? Maybe that's one thing to put it, as in a way that's respectful. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I thought it was like it's not like there's anything new here. It's just that when I heard Jeff Gerstmann talk about it and then immediately turn around and this cosplay photographer is talking about like how important it is in Japan right now. Again, I don't really know much about what Japan conventions are like, if there's a common thing, or, being a cosplay photographer, he's going to have a very particular view on how important something is or isn't, right? And I'm going to take a strong guess. He's going to lean towards it being important, right? If you're a cosplay photographer. So yeah, it's just one of those things that like, I just didn't really think about until, all those pieces get kind of put down in front of me. And then it's like, okay, what's going on there? All right. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those conversations I just don't know how to figure out and navigate myself. I think it'd be good like to talk about sexual content at some point on Hot Pot Gaming with somebody. But yeah, the big thing is just like finding somebody who understands how I want to talk about the sexual content in a game. I think one of the most, I don't want to say one thing that, not one of the most, but like one thing that I have had trouble with in the past is when somebody reaches out to me and they want to express their enjoyment of an 18 plus thing, right? Because they know, okay, Ben will look at these things and not really have a problem with them, and I can, express this to him, and it's fine, right? And like most of the time, that's fine. I don't have it's not easy for me if you're just sending me pictures of, whatever's your fancy, right? I don't really want to know whatever your fancy is, right? I would be interested in your relationship with the game, maybe related to sexual content. But I don't just want like pictures of whatever girl you think or guy you think is like the sexy one. At least if I don't know you, right? I think one thing that I am willing to do in private is engage a little bit more in that kind of like, I don't know how to put it, willingness to just appreciate something for how it visually looks in that sexual way, right? It's something that I do try to do in very specific scenarios with very specific people that I'm really trying to, I think, better understand their relationship with sexual content. And I feel comfortable sharing that kind of experience with them, right? And like, it's not something that it doesn't come off as like really gross, I guess. I think it's like the right person with the right demeanor about it. And if you come to me and say, hey, I just think this is like a sexy picture, I'm usually willing to just like take that. But like, it's just a specific environment and specific people I'm willing to like do that with. If you're like a random person on Twitter just sending me like whatever you think is sexy today, I don't actually really want to know. So, do what you want. Don't get me wrong. Like, and if you do want to send it to me, like, I'm not going to be offended. It's just at some point it's just like, okay, well, I just don't have a particular interest in whatever kink you have, unless there's like something more substantial to do with it, at least for random people. So, anyways. Speaking of kinky games, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, or Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. Why is it kinky? Because they ripped it all out. If you don't remember, there's like some weird like censorship stuff that happened when this game came out, where they like removed the boob slider from the American release and also changed some of the outfits and stuff like that. Anyways, but whatever, that doesn't really matter. What a segue. The segue you have to explain. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition coming to the Switch. This is finally happening. If you don't know, Xenoblade Chronicles X is, as far as I'm aware, I think the last Xenoblade Chronicles games that was not on the Nintendo Switch. So this is them kind of finally fulfilling that at probably a time that makes a lot of sense in the back half of the Switch's lifespan here, as we kind of move into Switch 2 kind of being a thing. I actually don't know if this is a Monolith specific thing, or if they're working with like a company like a Tantalus or something like that to get this done. But yeah, it is interesting because I think, in my mind, now keep in mind, what I think is not necessarily true. This is just my personal mind. Xenoblade Chronicles X is probably the most difficult Xenoblade game to play, in my opinion. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has its problems, but it is generally easy enough to play from start to finish, right? Xenoblade Chronicles X is a game with a lot of very strange quality of life decisions and design choices, or lots of strange issues with quality of life and stuff like that. Part of that's from just design choices and like how certain things overlap with each other in terms of like active quests and things like that. Your ability to leave a quest, where people are, if you need to like have them join your quest because they might be out in the world just doing whatever. There's a lot of just like weird little issues there all throughout the game. And the game in a lot of ways does feel a bit incomplete because it as far as I'm aware, the game definitely had a kind of a turbulent dev cycle, and it always kind of felt like, hey, we're wrapping up the Wii U, guys. Like, get this out there. Get it done, get it out, kind of thing. So it's just kind of a weird game. That being said, I would say Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is also a very weird game, and everybody was fine with it. So that's the best-selling Xenoblade game. So I don't think what I think it really matters here. But I think the reason why I want to bring that up is because this port looked pretty dang close to the original visually, at least. So there is going to be some new content in the game, so they're definitely making some changes. But I'd be curious to know like how much they're going to do to overhaul the game in that regard, because there's just a lot of weird things in that game they never quite solved, which is interesting because in Japan it got like a pretty decent lifetime. I think it was like 6 months to a year of content. And then the US release just included all that in the original release, and that was kind of the wrap up of the game kind of thing. So the Xenoblade Chronicles X International was kind of the definitive edition originally. So anyways, point being, so they're putting this thing out. It's coming out, I think, March next year. The big change I think that everyone kind of noticed immediately is that they did make some changes to the character faces. If you don't remember, that game had some issues with having character faces that like appealed to a broad audience. This is before Xenoblade Chronicles 2 kind of changed the visual aesthetic of the Xenoblade franchise, and also had a very like old PS2 approach to anime style graphics, where we have very standard kind of 3D character models and stuff like that, but we apply this like anime aesthetic to the characters. And as you got into like the HD era of gaming, I think that was just happening less and less. And so it makes it a very unique looking game on the Wii U, I will say. Today, I prefer what Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U looks like compared to the modern Xenoblade series. I think the modern Xenoblade series just looks very, fine. I understand why they made that change, and I think it's perfectly appropriate. It's very much just that kind of like Tales anime style with maybe some like slight changes here and there aesthetically, but I just think it just looks a little straightforward. That being said, when Xeno was doing this kind of stuff before, that was also just the kind of the style at that time, so it was also just kind of very straightforward, right? Baten Kaitos boys complaining about the aesthetics of modern Monolith Soft game. Like, let me tell you. Baten Kaitos, beautiful game. God. God, I want a new IP. Anyways, that being said, anything to like look different, but I feel like we're stuck. We're stuck with Xeno, and I think even if we get something that's not Xeno, it's going to look like Xeno. That's my opinion. But who can say? Been doom and glooming about the Monolith Soft franchise. But anyways, this looks cool. And they updated the faces of the characters and made them look more in line with the original Xenoblade Chronicles, the new vision of how the game looks now, since Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So it does not look like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I think they took a lot of the character design elements of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and kind of merged them in with the character faces and stuff like that. Some of it looks a little weird, but I say that having played 200 hours of Xenoblade Chronicles X, so, I'm going to feel a little weird about something because I'm so used to the other thing, right? So I think the only thing that I'm really waiting to see at this point is if that new content they're adding to the game is going to be a standalone experience, like with Xenoblade Chronicles 1 when they added the Future Connected. I thought that was, I think those kind of experiences are great ways to revisit these video games. I would love if I could boot that thing up, make a character, and just play some like quick little 10 to 20 hour small open world thing. And it'd be good, or like even like less than 10 hours is fine. That was a Future Connected. I felt it was like 6 hours, something like that. It's just like a really nice way to revisit something and not have to like dedicate myself to replaying that whole game. Especially because I played through Xenoblade Chronicles X basically twice through. I've technically beat it once, but the first time when I lost my save file, when I sent my Wii U back to Nintendo to get fixed, that was like at the end of the game that I lost that save file. So, anyways. But that's just my hope at this point. I think that will determine whether or not I buy this. I had some people be like, oh, you're going to buy this just to support Monolith Soft? Probably not in this case. I think it would only be if I want to play something on it. Baten Kaitos I feel a little bit differently for, because Baten Kaitos is one of those RPGs that are one of my favorites, and I really would like Baten Kaitos to... I don't even really want Baten Kaitos to come back. I bought Baten Kaitos for like $10 used, right? Both of those games, the first one and the second one. So like I didn't really feel like I supported it at the time, and I really liked them a lot. But the bigger thing is just like, hey, I would like to support something that's not Xeno, and obviously I don't have any expectations that would result in something that would be, would lead to anything. I think that's what I always say when you buy things that are more of like, hey, I want to buy this because, outside of just playing a game. But I think in that particular case, I just had enjoyed the original game so much. I just kind of wanted to formally, purchase something at some point for it. Same thing with like Freedom Wars. I'll probably buy Freedom Wars because I got it for like $10 used at the time, and I love Freedom Wars. So anyways, that's my plan, is to not buy it unless there's like some standalone content. And then, I don't know. I think with the Xeno franchise, I feel like the Soma Bringer video I did was a really nice kind of like wrap up on my feelings of how I feel about Xeno. That if the next game they announce is just kind of more Xenoblade Chronicles in the style of like 2 or 3, like 2 is the basis of that stuff, right? And so 2 is really kind of the core one. If I were to look at it and say, this isn't for me, I'd be happy with that, I think. I'm just like, cool. Well, I'm good. I'm done. I'm going to go play White Knight Chronicles 1. That is, I can finally play White Knight Chronicles 1. But I just think that I think I'd be okay with that. That's not to say that I will feel that way. I'm not guaranteeing I will. Even if it looks somewhat like it, as long as there's something that kind of catches my eye, I'm happy to give it a shot. But I think I'm at a point where I think I am asking myself, okay, well, this is what Monolith Soft is now. Do I care about this? And I want to reiterate, with all those Xenoblade games, they're all great games. There are so many great games out there that I could be playing, but I am not somebody who's here to just play a good experience. Right? If you're going to give me something that is just kind of in line with the past things that you're doing, I don't really want to hang around, right? Like I'm good. I will go play someone else's games, right? I do think there's some things to be said about core values, right? One of the things I'm really appreciating about MediaVision's games at the moment is that a lot of their video games feel designed around a lot of very similar core values. And, but what changes is how those values are implemented, right? That's what I was looking for out of Monolith Soft. I'm pretty sure it's just like, hey, here's some core things about your games that I think are very cool. And I would love to see all the different ways you can implement this. And, I think the problem is that since Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and to some extent into Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and X, but I think these days I'd say 2 is probably the more likely starting point. I'm sitting here asking like, okay, what's next? And I think the answer so far has been, I don't know, more lore. And I'm like, that's the Xenoblade lore is not why I'm here. Sorry. Do I forget his name. God dang it. Borealis. Do I love Borealis? Yeah, I love him. He's beautiful. He's my favorite Xenoblade Chronicles 3 character. I don't need to see Borealis again. It's fine. I don't know if Borealis is named Borealis or something like that. I don't know. The guy with the, I don't know. He's like a captain out of base after this lady leaves. I don't know. He's good. I like him. I don't remember his name. So if you ever make some Xenoblade content of that character, let me know because I love that man. He's a beautiful man. Anyways, there's that. That's March, I believe, is when that's coming out. I didn't write it down here, but I'm just going to dream that that's the right answer. Another Nintendo news, technically re-release news, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete. Is that what it's called? Let me just double check. Let me do game journalist doing research. I'm going to open this tweet. Yes, Pocket Camp Complete. That's coming out. That is a reworking of the original Animal Crossing Pocket Camp game. So, that's been a live service game going on for I don't know how many years at this point. 7 years it looks like. The game itself, I don't really know a lot about it, but it did seem like from afar that it was doing some interesting things here and there. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I love this kind of thing of just like, hey, we worked on this game for like 7 years and we're not going to let it go to waste, right? We're going to go and retweak the game and sell it to you in a way that makes some sense, right? I mean, that's kind of the original problem that like, hey, go and think about Final Fantasy XI, right? People are like, hey, you're going to make an offline version of Final Fantasy XI? And it's Chronicles is like, no, because that would cost a bunch of money. And so it's really cool that Animal Crossing Pocket Camp can, enjoy that option, right? It'd be lovely if more games could do that, but I imagine Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is a game that has the clout and user base to take a $10 to $20 purchase and be able to use that to justify selling you something that is less connected to all the stuff, and you can largely operate offline, like Mega Man X Dive. I can say words. That being offline as well and having that content, I think is really cool. So I'm tempted. I will say this, one thing that if you have been following me for a really long time, Animal Crossing has been this long-term thing of me trying to like navigate, how I feel about it and picking up games, hoping that I'll get something out of Animal Crossing because I like the core idea of Animal Crossing. I really enjoy it. Like I enjoyed Animal Crossing on the GameCube a ton. But I feel like it's one of those series that like I have been trying to figure out my problem with it for ever since the first game, basically. Cause I was like, what I really wanted was something else. And, that's kind of where the Nintendo video I'm working on came from, was me realizing that what I wanted out of Animal Crossing, was basically never really promised to me. But at the time I felt like it was a promise to me kind of thing. But that's the Nintendo video. I'm working on it. Coming out. Speaking of working on things, Kofi, Demo Dory, thank you so much for your monthly donation. Conspicuous Snoop, I'll probably keep you in around for a while. Conspicuous Soup, because you donated like $120, something like that. So if I can, I'll keep mentioning you for multiple months here. Even though it's only one donation, but it was one big boy donation. I forget if we talked about it on the show last time, but we did meet our goal. So thank you so much, everyone who donated. And you're like, Ben, if it's been 2 weeks, why haven't you done your goal yet? Well, what was the goal, Ben? Well, the goal was to basically take a day off work and go work on a video for that full day, basically. all the other like promises I make through Ko-fi and Patreon ultimately took time away from making the videos that you're donating to me for. So this was a way to accept donations for me to work on the videos. I think this week I should have time to take a day off my normal contract work and work on this instead. So I think that's the plan. If not, I'll probably plan the week afterwards unless something urgent comes up. So that's gonna be coming up here shortly. So again, thank you guys so much for helping me out. I think what the plan is going to be is to basically alternate between well, actually, before I get into that, let me hold off on that. Let me just do a quick little reminder of the content going on right now. Ray Barnholt, he came on the Hot Pot Gaming and talked to me about like his experience with Japanese games and his experience kind of trying to get his or interacting with like certain things that he cares about in Japan, like with like the director for the Boku no Natsuyasumi series, and then also the Game Center CX guy. He went to like the English event for that and like got to be on Game Center CX on TV and stuff like that. So yeah, that's there. I appreciate him coming in and talking to me about that. I had a little bit of challenge trying to figure out like what exactly I learned that process. I think the big thing though, when I realized it was like towards the end of the show, because in a lot of ways, I think a lot of what me and Ray do are similar. I do have my own personal hiccups about Japanese content in specific that I kind of was trying to see if he had as well, but ultimately he was just kind of like, no, I just like video games. And I'm like, respect. I appreciate that. But when it comes to the other stuff later on the line, it made me realize that like my anxiety around talking to people, I think is different than his anxiety around talking to people. I think with him, it is like it seems to be there's a level of comfort you can eventually get with him, where with me, I think a lot of times, even in normal conversations with people I've known for like decades, I can get kind of worried about stuff in a way that really bothers me. And in some ways, I think kind of like makes me not be as good about continuing the conversation in a way that I think is as fruitful, because I've become very aware of everything I'm saying if I feel like I said something stupid earlier in the conversation. So it was interesting to see the different way he approached that, and then like what was easy for him, what was hard, and stuff like that. So summing that up in an episode title was not easy, I will say. So I did the best I could, I think. So, but it was a good conversation. So that podcast is out. Go listen to that if you want to take a look. There's a Gundam Seed podcast highlight coming up here. So if you don't remember, podcast highlights are like basically my video reviews, but I just take a clip from a podcast where I talked about a game, Gundam Seed, we talked about earlier this year for the PS2. So that's going to go up this week. So you should see that. And the week after that, I have a Japan Retro Direct pickup video of the most recent box I got from Japan Retro Direct. Check that out and enjoy it. So anyways, back to my day off work. Again, thank you again, Demodori and Conspicuous Snoop, for supporting me. It's really appreciate it. And I'll make sure when I finish the Nintendo video, I include you guys in the shout outs at the end. So, all right, day off work. So yeah, day off work to work on other things. So my plan is basically, I think number one is to get some work done on the Nintendo video. That's the video that the audio version's up on the page, or on the Ko-fi page right now. So if you want to go hear the audio of that, of like my first run through it, at least, you can go listen to that. I did get about 2 minutes into the video so far in terms of video editing. So usually it depends on the video. It depends on what's going on in the video. So I'm not making any guarantees. I think it's like a 10 to 12 minute video. So that probably means another like 8 to 10 hours worth of work at the very least in terms of video editing specifically. That doesn't count, making the thumbnails and all the other stuff that goes around with that. So, that's the plan, but I probably won't spend the entire time working on that Nintendo video because it is very, like, I can definitely sit down and work on something 8 hours straight like that. But it becomes very, difficult to, I feel gross at some point. So I think what I'm going to try to do is every 2 hours alternate between doing the Nintendo video and then also working on the Final Fantasy XI script. I've just had a lot of experience with Final Fantasy XI at this point. I haven't really done a huge update on my script basically since we first started talking about Final Fantasy XI and me making that proof of concept video that I uploaded a while back ago. There's a lot of different things that I'm trying to figure out with that video, specifically because Final Fantasy XI is just like such a huge game. And then also things that matter early on in Final Fantasy XI still matter later, but in different ways. And so it's like, well, what does level 1 through 10 look like? And while they all use the same core concepts of what, level, 40 through 50 look like or something like that, right? It is a very different setup kind of thing. Like the what matters in those moments and how they impact you as a player is very different. So I think there's going to be kind of like sections of time in the video where I kind of re-talk about certain topics, but layering on new aspects to that. I don't know if that's going to be confusing to the listener if we break it up in that way. I hope not, because I think that like doing some kind of chronological follow through of what's happening is still important. But, if you watch that original proof of concept video, it's not going to be in that kind of like blog diary format like I was doing before, where everything was like hyper analyzed. I think I'm going to take the highlights of each of those moments and try to either work them into that particular time or work them into later in the video. So some of the early script I think will stay somewhat similar to that original video, but I think the pace of what the video moves through and like how it's presenting it and how it frames it is going to be very different than that original approach. So anyways, so one challenge I am running into thinking about it is, so one of the choices I made when playing Final Fantasy XI is I wanted to try playing a new job I hadn't played before. If you don't know, I originally played Paladin. It's kind of a tank class. Kind of go up on the enemies, melee, cast heals on yourself and sometimes your other party members, but the goal is to take as much damage as possible so nobody else gets hit. And so I was like, okay, I want to take a new approach and I want to try a different job. And so I started leveling White Mage because White Mage has some things that I was like always kind of wanted to mess around with. And it is kind of similar to Paladin, but it's a little different in terms of like how of the tools available to it. And so it gives me more flexibility than Paladin had in regards to at least solo play. Solo play is not a very common thing in Final Fantasy XI. Solo play is a very hard thing in Final Fantasy XI. A lot of times, like solo play is probably the most dangerous content in Final Fantasy XI. And that can be normal enemies, right? That's not just like a boss fight, right? Like it could be literally just like, I have a video on the OCP archiving channel that is literally like me just trying to solo like a random scorpion in the desert and like nearly dying. I had to use like every tool I had to succeed. Anyways, but but the problem with that is that when I was doing group content, that meant that I had to stand in the back because I'm the healer, right? And so when I'm going to make a video, I do have a worry that when I need to show off certain content in the game, it's not going to look very interesting and it's going to be hard to know what's happening because there's not a lot of action happening on screen. There's action happening, it's just kind of far away. So, and that also goes to just like higher level party play and stuff like that as well. So it is something that I'm thinking about right now of like, okay, is this going to be a problem? And, is it something that I can address? Because one of the nice things about Final Fantasy XI at the time, and I think it's more common today in general, is that you can change your jobs, right? And so you can play a different class. And so I do have the opportunity to record me playing other classes doing content and show that instead. The ice cream truck's outside, so sorry if you hear it going off, but I'm just going to keep going through because I got a lot of interruptions that happened already. I'm too tired to stop. But anyways, but yeah, so I was like, well, maybe if I like leveled another class, that'd be interesting. Paladin is like the easy one because I do have experience with Paladin and I do enjoy playing Paladin. And as a tank, as one of the few tanks in Final Fantasy XI, it's very easy to get parties as Paladin. It's a very high in demand job, at least early on. Later on, it's a little less desired for a lot of different reasons. I won't go into it, but early on, it's very, very easy to pick up and play on Paladin. And the other thing I was thinking about was Dark Knight as well. I was originally planning on playing Dragoon, which is a class where you have like a little dragon companion. And there are a lot of interesting things about Dragoon. But when I sat down and thought about what Dragoon would mean in terms of where I would play it, which is primarily probably going to be in a party situation now that I've like have White Mage leveled up, I think the class is not going to be that interesting to me. So I was like, maybe Dark Knight would be better because Dark Knight has some really interesting tools that allow you to deal a lot of damage, but it comes at the sacrifice of your own health. And they also had the ability to use some ranged attacks with different elements to those. They have the ability to use magic spells, and those spells have different roles and things like that. And so there's a lot of like really interesting things that Dark Knight can do, I feel like, in a party environment. I think Dark Knight is a job that probably thrives in a party environment specifically, even though it's not a very in-demand job generally. It would be a slower process to get Dark Knight leveled. I also have not leveled Dark Knight at all, so I'd be starting from level 1, which can take a long time. I mean, it has been over a year now, and I am just now going to hit Final Fantasy, or level 75 in Final Fantasy 11. So like once I am done recording this podcast, I have stuff I need to do generally, so I'm going to go ahead. Gosh, this ice cream truck's still here. I hope you guys enjoy that music. If you hear it, it's just like sitting right outside my apartment. Anyways, but once level 75, I think I'm going to try to hit level 75 tonight, and then that'll be the end of kind of the leveling road for my main job. And getting level 75 in this old version of Final Fantasy 11 is this very kind of long journey. It doesn't need to be that long, but when I originally played the game back in the day, it took me probably over a year to get 75 as well. So this kind of lines up. I think I was probably playing more back then, but at the same time back then, the experience points requirements for leveling up were very different from today. And so, I probably was playing more then, but I just, wasn't playing it in the way that I think. I don't play games like this very efficiently, and I think anytime there's like efficiency becomes a thing, it starts getting really frustrating to me. And so like I spend a lot of time just kind of doing other things, and thankfully in a game like Final Fantasy 11, doing other things in games can be very beneficial to you. There's a lot of things about Final Fantasy 11 that when you go and just do other things, you will get benefits to your main job, even if it's not like the most immediate need you have. It does give you the ability to utilize new tools on your job. So like it's pretty cool that Final Fantasy 11 is a game that lets you do that, where it's gonna be like, hey, if I really want like some thief abilities, I could level thief, and then my white mage can have thief abilities as well, right? I think that's a cool aspect of Final Fantasy 11 that Final Fantasy 14 did originally have, but kind of got stripped away at some point. So yeah, once I hit level 75, the only real thing that will be left for me to finish this year is the first expansion pack, which is the Zillart expansion. I don't remember how much I mentioned this on the show, but that was like my two goals this year was to hit level 75 and finish the Rise of the Zillart expansion pack. And so I think 2 major fights away from the end of Rise of the Zillart. The Rise of the Zillart, you can, like, one of the fights I want to do, you can do in an easier way, where you just fight, like, it's basically like a full party of enemies that you have to fight against. But if you want to, you can go do, like, one at a time. You just don't get a reward for it. It just lets you progress the story without doing the big fight. But I want to do the big fight where you have an entire party of characters you're fighting against, kind of thing. And that's, like, 18-man content. So, this weekend, to get the item to make that stuff appear, I had to basically... I had this special ink, and then a piece of paper. The special ink I got randomly, thankfully, so I just happened to have it, and the paper is like easy enough you just buy off the auction house. And you go to this fountain at the in this one like ancient city thing, and the fountain is drained except for when there is a full moon, a clear sky, and it's between midnight and 3 a.m. in the game. And at that point, the fountain will fill up, and if you put the ink and the paper in there, it will create the item that you can use to do this big fight kind of thing. And when you do the big fight, you get a reward, an earring with like specialized stats on it and stuff like that. And I think it's like just a cooler fight in general. But it's because it needs to be full moon, clear skies between midnight and 3 a.m. Really, the weather's the big thing there. Like, you can know when a full moon is. You can check the moon cycles and things like that. You can figure that out. Obviously, when it's midnight, but if it gets to midnight and it's cloudy, then you're just like standing there. So I stood like in front of this like fountain with like 10 other people for like 4.5 hours waiting for this thing to fill and trade this thing in. And I know that sounds like silly. It's like the problem that Final Fantasy 11 has, where it's like, okay, I'm explaining this to you, and you're like, that sounds miserable. I mentioned it at Cargan, and she's like, that sounds like watching paint dry. And I'm like, I mean, it kind of is. But the point is to kind of, I think with the video that I'm doing, is to kind of like take those moments and say, okay, well, what does this moment really mean in the context of playing Final Fantasy 11, right? Because one of the things that happens in that moment is that you're sitting there with a bunch of other people waiting for the same thing to happen, right? You're just sitting there waiting. And that may, you could walk away, and I did walk away at times to just like not do anything, or you can sit there and chat with people and interact with them, stuff like that, right? And so when you chat with people, you can have little conversations and stuff, right? So, I got some various like crafting advice, and then, some people were joking about filling up the fountain by peeing into it. It's like, okay. So, there's just little things there, here and there, whether you want to hear that joke or not from somebody, it's there, and that's just like a little wrinkle you have. And if I wasn't just sitting there standing in front of this fountain for 4 hours, what would I be doing otherwise? There's other things going on, but and then, again, if you're like standing there waiting, you can just I would go up and do other things. I would walk away from the game and stuff like that. So. But yeah, once I hit 75, I think really the big thing is like if I'm finishing those story missions, and then at that point the question is like, do I want to do end game, which is basically getting new gear at level 75. I feel like at this point, not doing that would be probably kind of a weird thing to do, mostly because I did do end game back in the day, so it probably would be good to learn more about what goes on in end game. I do not want to get like a very intensive group for that. If I do that, though, I would want something that's going to be more casual, maybe one time a week kind of thing. Like when I did Endgame back in the day on retail, I don't have the greatest memory of this, but I really seem to recall like basically playing every day with this group in some way. And that's all good and dandy and fine when I'm in high school doing nothing else, but as an adult, I got other things going on. I run a podcast and all this other stuff, right? So I think I'd want to get a casual group and then just kind of try to log in, as they need me kind of thing. And, that means I won't get rewards as fast. I'm going to get, I guess, but, I'd be able to try other things. So, but yeah, I mean, in that situation though, it is kind of a little different because you're relying on other people to do things. And so, unless I take control of a group, which I don't want to do, I'm kind of just along for the ride, and, things happen as they happen, and then I choose whether or not I join in. So with the rest of what I'm doing in Final Fantasy XI, once I finish the story content, is really going to be kind of up to me at this point, like what I want to do. And because I don't really have any specific goals with that stuff, other than maybe getting some footage of playing Dark Knight and Paladin, that would, help bolster the video a little bit. I think it's going to be a little bit different. There's still more story content I could be doing in Final Fantasy XI. So I might try to do some of that. There's one of the nice things about the second expansion, which is Chains of Promathia, is that it does do level synced content. So when you start Chains of Promathia, you're doing level 30 content, and that allows you to play with people who don't have level 75 characters. So I've got at least one friend who is on the lower level spectrum at the moment. So it would be good to be able to do that content with him in that fashion kind of thing. Also, it doesn't seem confirmed yet, but it sounds like they're trying to get the third expansion out here sometime in the next 3 or 4 months. But, it's been something they've been talking about for a very long time on this private server. So we'll see what happens. That expansion, that I would be interested in pursuing that expansion a little harder, just because at the time when I was playing the game, I was kind of stepping away from the game during that expansion. I was definitely hanging around and doing stuff, but I didn't do a lot of really interesting content in that expansion. I more of just kind of hanged around and just kind of chilled out during that expansion. So it'd be good to try some of the more challenging content of that expansion, because I just never did it. So, but again, I would want that to be a very casual thing. So I think whatever that thing is, I want to be just a very small impact on my life generally kind of thing. So, and I think it'll be important for me to just make sure I'm not overly committing to anything, because I don't really want to keep playing Final Fantasy XI super intensely. I have basically, since I came back from Portland Retro Game Expo, because I've been doing a lot of other projects and stuff. So I've been I just had a lot of things to get off my plate, and playing more games in some ways adds more things to my plate. So Final Fantasy XI is this kind of slower, longer term thing that I don't have to worry about as much, which is nice. But also I was getting to the point where I was getting to where I wanted to be by the end of this year. So it felt like it was probably good to just kind of commit to getting myself to the position I want to be in. So hopefully soon that will be something I can do. Hopefully tonight. If not tonight, hopefully sometime in the next week or two. So anyways, but lastly, I know this episode's getting a little long, but one thing that I did also take a little time to think about today, and this is the fourth time I really thought about this before really taking any action yet, is Final Fantasy 14. One thing, just kind of a quick reminder, Final Fantasy 14, a video game that I do not like very much. I liked 1.0 and 1.23, but once we got to 2.0, I tried to give it a shot for probably about 6 months to a year, and ultimately just kind of bounced off of it at some point. And I've continued to revisit it in the past, but have not been particularly happy about it in the past. And a lot of it, I think, had to do with, the baggage of that game being based off a game I already liked, but making it like taking away all the things I liked about the game. So Final Fantasy 14 in its modern sense is just a very different game than what I played. And I think that's been a very challenging thing for me to get over. So I really want to take some time when I play that game again to really sit down and scrutinize everything I'm thinking while I'm playing Final Fantasy 14. Because if I'm in a situation where I'm comparing it to like a Final Fantasy 11 thing or Final Fantasy 14 1.0 thing, and I am like downgrading my fun with it because of that, I think I really need to stop and ask myself, what am I doing? I think there's kind of three major categories of things I need to really be hyper aware of when I'm playing Final Fantasy 14. One is going to be the social aspect of it. I think things I've mentioned before is that Final Fantasy 14 is a game that I have self-isolated myself extensively in. Basically since 2.0 launched, there's just so many tools to prevent you from having to ask anybody for anything in Final Fantasy 14, and trying to find a way to create some kind of social environment that I would be able to interact with other people in a way that's like meaningful, but it's also not just people carrying me. I hate being carried through content. I think it's so boring. I think sitting there and having somebody do something for you is so boring. And so, I'm not saying that you never can do it, but I don't want to do that. It's just like, it's so like, even if like whatever it is, it's just like the most like mind numbing thing. I would much rather do the mind numbing thing than watch somebody else do it for me. It just, I can't stand it. So I think I need to find some kind of environment where that makes sense. Not necessarily having to do content with other people, but having a more social interaction with the game. I don't really understand what the Final Fantasy 14 social environment looks like when you're not at endgame, right? I don't really know what that is, what matters, why do you play with other people? If you ever play with other people, is it a forced thing that like you just have to want to play with other people? What limitations are there with that? And like, what is there a reason to play with other people? Like finding reasons to play with other people is like a big thing. And if that is not something that I can find, then I need to basically find a way to give myself reasons to play with other people, I think, in that situation. And if I can't find that, that's fine. It's just, I need to be searching for those things. Final Fantasy 14 is a social game. People are socializing on there in different ways all the time. So obviously the social element's there, right? It's just like, what does that look like? How do I find how to get to that on my own, right? Combat. That's the other big one. I really don't like raid style combat in Final Fantasy 14 or games like Rabbit and Steel. Every game I've played that plays like that, I really don't like how it plays. I don't understand why I don't like how it plays. I think I've come to some conclusions regarding presentation, some conclusions regarding to noise, visual noise, just there being too much stuff going on, conclusions about like the whole thing of just like moving your character around all the time, conclusion about like inputs that feel useless with like rotation stuff, all that kind of stuff. I've had those feelings before. I need to not have those feelings in the same way. I need to sit down and say, okay, what do I like about this? What do I don't like about this? And what can I change to try to, set myself up to appreciate this in a different way? And then finally, progression. This one seems like maybe the most challenging one because I am getting very mixed feedback from other people regarding what is a good way to manage progression in Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 is basically a single player RPG if you want it to be that way, and you can follow the story. I am in expansion 3.0. The game's on like version 7.0 now, expansion version. So like I could literally just do story content nonstop for months, if not over a year. But that is not what I want to do. And everybody always says you're going to burn out on story content if you just keep doing story content. Then I ask them, what else can I do? And then often I get a kind of like shrug of like, I don't know, you could do other stuff, but none of it really matters. So it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I guess like maybe the answer to that is just like, don't binge Final Fantasy 14. I don't know. But that is the other thing that I just keep hearing as well. So all those things, all those negative things I have said, they need to be scrutinized heavily while I'm playing, and I need to find ways to work around those. I can't just sit there and let myself fester in this whole opinion about these things. If I want to give myself the best chance to enjoy Final Fantasy 14, there's always the answer of that, well, you just don't need to enjoy Final Fantasy 14. That's fine. But, obviously I kind of want to explore this in a way that makes me better understand the game, even if I don't like it, right? And the problem is right now is I do not understand Final Fantasy 14. I do not understand the appeal of Final Fantasy 14. I don't understand how any of these elements are things that people enjoy in Final Fantasy 14. That's not to say they can't be enjoyed. Otherwise, people wouldn't be playing it. So that's where I'm at with that. Anyways, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneChore.com is the website. Again, I'll try to do some take a day off this week to work on some stuff. I'll share my progress updates on Ko-fi with people who have backed me, either with the Final Fantasy 14 script or Final Fantasy 11 script rather, or with the Nintendo video as well. Those two things will both happen, hopefully, assuming I do that this week. So, anyways, check out that Gundam video when it comes out. Thank you to and then also the Japan Retro Direct unboxing video, and then thank you again to Demo Dory and Conspicuous Snoop for donating. I appreciate it. And that's going to be it. There's going to be a new PCFX Fan Club episode podcast out here shortly as well, so go check that out if you have not listened to that. It's going to be about more homebrew stuff on the PCFX, so go check that out. Talking to David Shadoff again. So anyways, thank you guys so much, and have a great week, and I'm going to hopefully hit level 75 tonight. If not, well, someday I'll become a fully matured white mage.